Hey everybody, this is Kai from High School Movie Reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing Annihilation by Alex Garland. And I was really looking forward to this movie. Just saw the trailers, and it's got crazy sounds going on in the trailers, and freaking looking deer and stuff like that, which is what I'm pretty pumped about. And then it was like all out of nowhere, it was like directed from the same guy who directed Ex Machina, and I was like, oh damn, because that's such a good movie, and definitely one of my favorite movies from a couple of years ago, so I'm pretty much down for any thing that the director of Ex Machina did. And yeah, same with this movie. This movie is much more hard to understand. It's probably much more intellectually challenging. I walked out of this movie having no clue what happened. Well, kind of an idea of what happened, but once you start watching YouTube videos and stuff like that afterwards, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's smart. Nice. I did also read the book Annihilation from Jeff Vandermeer. And for all those people that are looking for a pretty similar adaptation, it is nothing like the book. The concepts are still the same as the book, but just the overall plot, storyline, very different. And, you know, you would think a lot of the time, like, you would have a problem with that, but I guess Jeff Vandermeer actually wrote the screenplay to this movie, so it still feels very much like the Annihilation book. It just has different plot points. Which I don't really have a problem with. It felt like exactly kind of the same themes that went on in the book. Instead of with going like in the book, you can kind of tell she's going crazy, and it plays for more of a psychological feel. Like, you don't know like what she's saying. You can actually trust that or not. The movie does not play on that same level, and I think that's really difficult to play on that same level because the book, after I read it, I just did not feel like you could fairly adapt it to a movie. Because of that, Alex Garland went for much more of a visually stunning feel with it. Each one of the scenes that they're in, it's sometimes terrifying, it's like horrific and just gory, but it's beautiful, and that's what I love about it. This world that they're walking through, it is truly a gorgeous world. And like I said before, you see those little deer and you're like, huh, those are some cool looking deer, I like those. Now, one thing is it's not really a popcorn movie either. You know, I ended up going to this movie, and in the back there were a bunch of middle schoolers, and I really just wish they left because I'm sure they're expecting some kind of like action, sci-fi adventure, and it is a sci-fi adventure, but it's not action, you know? Like, from the trailers, you can see how some people would perceive it, that they're going into Area X, and you don't know much on what's going on in Area X, but they need to stop it, and then there's a cool looking bear in the trailer that they probably need to fight and stuff. But for the most part, it isn't action-packed like that. It's kind of a slow burn. You end up watching it, and it is boring and tedious in some moments. I personally didn't feel like that, but I can see how other people would feel like that. Now, there are also scenes in this movie, so like in the trailer, you see this kind of like bear-looking thing, like growling between them. That is one of the most terrifying scenes I've ever seen in a movie. There are horror films that their entire goal is to be a horror film, and it never makes me flinch at all. But this movie, which it isn't intended to be a horror film, has this bear in it, and this bear is just terrifying. That whole scene in there is definitely the most terrifying scene that I've ever seen in the movie recently. And that's including A Quiet Place too, which had some really freaky moments. In fact, this scene is probably really similar to A Quiet Place in that way that it just grabs your attention. It has so much tension going on in it that it's hard not to just lean back in the back of your seat. So thinking of just like honorable like actors in this. So they do have Oscar Isaac in this movie, and he's good in it. You know, he plays Oscar Isaac. He's always super likable in movies. He's not in it very much, so if you're like, oh, Poe Dameron, let's go see that movie. You know, probably not the same thing. I wouldn't say he gave as great of a performance in as he did in Ex Machina, because him as a villain in Ex Machina was just simply one of the greatest villains I've ever seen. And then there's also Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman did a good job. She was probably the most accurate thing to the book that there is, just because she's very quiet, very reserved, very serious, but because of that, it's not like she's boring, but she's simple. You can tell she's a smart person, and sometimes that just comes with a reserved thing. There's also other plot points in that they added to the movie that weren't in the book that humanizes her a bit more, and I really like that element of this movie. Tessa Thompson was also in this movie. Tessa Thompson was probably my favorite character in this movie. She's just peaceful. She was cool. I'm trying to think of her name right now. Anyways, there's two other actresses in this movie. One of them was, I'm pretty sure, she's the girl from Jane the Virgin, and she did a fantastic job in this movie. The other girl, I can't tell you who she is, but she was kind of the antagonist of this movie, and she is she is also like directly taken out of the book, and she's just intimidating. She doesn't have much personality going on. She's the psychologist in the book. Just that's who it is, and she kind of has her own agenda going on in this book. So, and you're not quite sure what that is. So I loved her character too. Every time she was on the screen, she just made me frustrated. I just did not like this chick. So that was great. And as the film goes on, it just kind of unveils new layers of each one of these characters, which was really interesting. And so one thing, like I've said this in one of my other reviews, some of my favorite movies ever are the Cloverfield movies, and I was kind of expecting this movie to have that same kind of sense of mystery, and it does have that sense of mystery, and it does kind of end up explaining it, but it does end up just being so vigorous, the process of learning it, and you like that by the time you walk out of the movie, there is no awe moment where you're like, oh, that's why that happened. But once you start to think about it, talk about it with your friends, and that is definitely something that you will do. If you go see this movie with a bunch of friends, you will probably sit for a good hour just after the movie talking about what the themes of this movie were, what it was trying to accomplish. And that is something that I really look for in a movie. So, in the end, I wouldn't say I absolutely love this movie like I loved Ex Machina. There are many elements of this movie that I really did like. It did bore me in some moments, but not too much. But in the end, it's probably a movie that you would actually want to, like, I don't know, bring someone who's really big into science. I watched this movie with my mom, who's got a PhD in genetics and just reproductive physiology. So she loved this movie. She loved just how you could tell that it was written by someone that really understands biology and just how reproduction works, stuff like that. So for someone like her, she got a lot out of this movie. So take more of your sciencey friends. I'm not sure it's more of I'm not sure if it would appeal to the indie crowd of your friends or any of your artsy friends. I personally don't think it would, but I would say I liked this movie. So go see it. It's definitely worth watching. So I'm Kai. Thanks again for watching my channel, and have a fantastic day, guys.